Welcome to Crimepedia podcast. I am your host, Cherry, and with me as always is my partner in crime, it's Morgan.
Hello, Cherry.
So we are back safe from CrimeCon.
We are back safe, COVID-free as of now.
Yeah, and luckily none of us got COVID in CrimeCon. Hot and sweaty we got, but not COVID.
Oh, so hot.
It was very hot, wasn't it?
So hot.
It was very hot, but it was brilliant, and we got to see. This is your first time in England, so I'm sure everybody wants to know how did you find it?
Interesting.
That's what I said when I came home from Vegas.
It's weird how we are as culturally we are very similar, but we're very, very different at the same time.
I was going to say I don't think we're similar at all. I think we're really different.
No. Culturally, as in, compared to other cultures, Americans and British are very similar, but there are not even, I don't want to say subtle nuances. There are very drastic differences between us and the UK.
Yeah, there are.
And good stuff and bad stuff, I think.
Yeah.
Great, things that I love. The fact that when I see a price of something, that's how much I'm going to pay.
Yeah, that's right.
Amazing.
Yeah, that is all you pay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. And you don't have to work out a tip here. You just give whatever tip you want to give.
Oh, yeah.
That's so much better.
No, I had a good time. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed London. I enjoyed seeing, northern part of England up there, Manchester area. Got to see Chester, South. Was it?
You went to Wales?
I went to Wales.
Yeah, you went to Wales. And you got to meet lots of exciting people at CrimeCon. You got to meet Colin Sutton.
That was amazing
because Paul Holes.
When we saw Colin Sutton, we saw him on Friday. Remember, because we were walking in from a little event that we were at.
Yeah.
And you said hello to him, and he gets up and says hello to you. And then he looks at me and he's like, "Oh, Morgan, great to put a face to the voice." And I'm like, "Oh my God, Colin Sutton, no, this is me. It's amazing."
Who else I'm trying to think who else you got to meet that was really cool. All the other podcasters,
everybody.
Obviously. You got to meet all the other podcasters, which is great.
And I got to meet some podcasters that I had no idea existed. Who were absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
I got to meet so many people. It was amazing.
We had lots of listeners come and meet us as well, which is really nice.
Did. Yeah, I was super excited that one of our listeners, him and his wife, said hello, and he was an ex-footballer. So I'm like, yes,
yeah,
we have an ex-footballer who's our listener. Hello, Matt.
He's a really nice guy as well, wasn't he? And his wife are really lovely, really nice people. Yeah. So it was lovely. And you got to meet Sam, who gave me my drawing. Yeah, it's amazing. You got to meet Sam, and he was lovely. Yep. And our two winners of our competition as well. We got to meet both of them, Eileen and Samantha.
Yep,
gorgeous girls. Yeah, it was lovely. It was really nice to see everyone. That's my favorite part of CrimeCon. It's like seeing everyone, chatting to everybody and explaining our podcast. I came home with a whole list of new cases that people were suggesting. Can you try this one? Can you set this one out? I've got meetings set up with people for new cases for everyone. So that's a really good part of CrimeCon.
This is what I will say. If you have been to CrimeCon in the US or have thought about it or interested, if you're interested in going to CrimeCon UK, definitely do it. Because this is the big difference between the two. Well, there are a few differences. Big difference between the two is at CrimeCon UK, the speakers are there. They're there. They're walking around. They're saying hello. They're coming to talk to you, Cherry, me. They're interested in what we're doing. You don't really get that in the US, where the speakers kind of are like shuffled off into their like VIP back areas and stuff.
Straight away, the first person that you can do that with is Paul Holes, because Paul Holes wandered around all day without any security around him.
Amazing.
He was chatting to everybody, cup of tea over here. You could literally sit next to him in the bar, which a lot of people did, and you didn't get that in the US. In the US, he was flounced by security everywhere, and you couldn't get anywhere near him to talk to him. Whereas in England, he just wandered around and people had no idea who he was half the time, to be honest. Yeah. So it must have been nice for him.
Where else can you say that you were sitting around having a drink with Paul Holes and Colin Sutton at 6 a.m.?
That's right. You can't.
I can.
You can't. Yeah.
It was amazing.
It's brilliant. It was really, really good. And the speakers were absolutely brilliant. There were so many people there from so many different avenues. There were people that do underwater investigation. There were people that do plant forensics there. There were people that do normal forensics there. There were police dogs. It's amazing. If you didn't get the chance to come to the British one, to the London one, there is another one in the UK. There's a Glasgow one in September, the 10th of September. So if you missed out on the London one, there's still time to get tickets for the Glasgow one. It's only a 1-day one, but it will be just as immersive and just as good as the London one. And London will be going ahead next year. It'll be a different venue, but it will be going ahead again. So
same weekend,
same time, same weekends,
different venue,
but different venue next year. So definitely get your tickets for next year.
I am telling you, if you have been to CrimeCon US and you liked it and you enjoyed it, go to the UK. Go to CrimeCon London. You will be in heaven. It's wonderful.
It is
wonderful.
Really
they put in an amazing event.
Yeah, and it's very victim-led, victim-focused. They don't... Over here, we don't focus on the killer and we don't focus on what they did. We focus more on the victim. And that is something that I think is really good. It's a really good thing. So we have our live session for you from CrimeCon with LaDonna Humphrey. And this is what you should have heard. This is the episode you should have heard. We did have a few technical hitches with the power going out at the hotel. So we've made sure that we've given you the episode you should have had. So if you weren't there, or even if you were there, have a listen to this one. I think you'll enjoy it.
Welcome to Crimepedia, live at CrimeCon UK. We are your hosts. I am Morgan, and with me, as always, is the lovely Cherry. Hello, Cherry.
Hello, and welcome to CrimeCon. How exciting is this?
Very exciting. Very exciting.
Very, very exciting. So thank you for joining us today. Today, we have got a very special guest with us. We are talking to the lovely LaDonna Humphrey, the author of the book, The Girl I Never Knew, Who Killed Melissa Witt. So on the 1st of December 1994, 19-year-old Melissa Ann Witt, who was known as Missy, went to meet her mum at Bowling World in Fort Smith in Arkansas, where she worked. Now, Melissa didn't make it inside to meet her mum, and in the car park, her keys were found by a passerby and handed in to staff. The passerby didn't notice, but actually one of her hoop earrings was also found, along with her hair clip. Now, Melissa's blood was also found at the scene, and there were signs of a scuffle. Unfortunately, there was no CCTV in the Bowling World car park or in the immediate vicinity, and now Melissa had vanished without a trace. Now, 45 days later, on the 13th of January 1995, two hunters were hunting near Turner's Bend in the Ozark National Forest, where they discovered a female body. Now, they thought that it was a mannequin, as you do, and they soon discovered that they were actually wrong. Unfortunately, it was the body of Melissa Witt. Melissa was found naked. She had no jewelry on and was missing her very distinctive Mickey Mouse watch. Now, the frantic hunters immediately called the Franklin County Sheriff's Department. Upon receiving this news, Sheriff Kenneth Ross contacted Detective Sergeant Chris Boyd with the Fort Smith Police Department Major Crimes Unit. The case was opened and the investigation began.
LaDonna Humphrey worked as a victim's advocate for missing adults, and on the 13th, January 1995, she was driving on her way to Fort Smith, listening to the radio as she and most of the world were invested in the O.J. Simpson trial, and prosecutors believe that O.J. had dropped a glove as he attempted to sneak back into his mansion the night of the Simpson-Goldman murders. There was another announcement on the radio that a body had been found in the Ozark National Forest that jolted her back to home, and she heard that authorities were on the scene. From that moment on, LaDonna had been obsessed with the Melissa Witt case.
So let us introduce you to the lady herself, LaDonna Humphrey. Hello.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming and talking to us. You've become pretty involved in this case, and it was very quickly that you became involved in it, and it's actually taken over your life, I think.
I think that's fair to say. I've been very invested for the past 7 years and have pretty much worked the case almost every day.
Now, you've commissioned a documentary, and you've written an absolute brilliant book, The Girl I Never Knew. As the title suggests, you actually didn't know Melissa, although you did have mutual friends. Can you tell us a little bit about Melissa herself? What kind of girl was she?
Yeah, Melissa was, you know, a 19-year-old. She was a college student and just very fun loving, very kind. I've spent endless hours conducting interviews with friends and people that knew Melissa, worked with her, and they all say the same thing. She never met a stranger. She was just full of life and was a friend to everyone. And I think that's probably one of the things that makes this murder even more horrific, is that she didn't have any enemies and she had her whole life ahead of her, and this person stole it from her.
And I've known you now for about 3 years, and I've looked into the Melissa Witt case a lot, and we've talked about it a lot. And now when I see her picture, it's like seeing somebody I know. It's you recognize her straight away and you sort of see her. So tell us a bit about the book. What made you decide to write this book in the first place?
I'd been working the case for so long, with the premise of this documentary that we've been working on, and just pushing for justice in her case. And a couple of things happened that really helped push the book along. And that was one, of course, COVID happened, and we've got this worldwide pandemic. And so people are at home. And I am not the type of person who can just be stagnant over something that I'm passionate about. And so I thought to myself, what can I do? I have to continue to propel Melissa's case. And that's really where the idea of the book came from, because one of the things that's happened over the past 7 years is that people are constantly asking me questions about the case, and that's great and good. And I love answering that in hopes of bringing closure to Melissa's case. But the book was really born to be able to tell who Melissa was, tell her story, and perhaps stir up some new leads in the case. And so, I put together an outline and sent it to some publishers, and the rest is history.
It's amazing. It's a brilliant, brilliant book.
Thank you.
How easy did you find researching the book? Was law enforcement helpful?
Research, I think, for any project is always very difficult, but I had worked this case for so long and have so many connections in the Fort Smith area that it was actually, I'd already gathered most of this knowledge in my research for the case. But along the way, law enforcement had been incredibly helpful. They continued to ask questions, they consulted with me as I wrote the book. And, I had some other professionals in the Fort Smith area too, judges, prosecuting attorneys, and different people who would help me compile the information or answer questions if I had it. So it was a long process, but I had a lot of support.
So did you find that there were any obstacles when you were researching for the book?
I mean, yes and no. There are always obstacles in any kind of case. I think, the biggest thing that you run across to in a cold case is that it's 27 years old.
Mm.
And during that time period, people can die. And we've had that happen in this case. People, change jobs, they move away. So that can be an obstacle, and we did face some of that.
Mm.
I think one of the things that I have been fairly efficient at is really keeping those connections of those people to the case close, no matter who it is. And I think that helped overcome some of those obstacles. And then, of course, you've always got people who are just going to be critical of what you do in a cold case, right?
Yeah, of
Because,
course.
so there's been a lot of that, but I do not let that deter me. The goal is justice for Melissa, so everybody else can move out of the way.
And I love that's what your goal is. The goal is justice for her. No matter what else you encounter, that's always the end goal. And I think that's really, really important to keep that in mind for people, that is what you're doing this for.
Absolutely, because people can be critical, and they have been, and they will be, and they will continue to be. I've had people accuse me of doing this for some sort of financial compensation, or for some sort of, you know, notoriety, and that's neither
No.
one is even a possibility in this case, because I've spent so much of my own time and money for 7 years. Everything that we do now, the book, the documentary, it's all to help further her case. It will go for DNA testing, anything that's needed, rewards. This is all about getting justice for her. And I just ignore the critics. I know why I'm doing what I do, and I have a job to do, and that's what I'm going to stay focused on.
Good. So in the book, you talked about visiting the scene where Melissa's body was found. This part of the story was really I think it was really touching for me. How was it when you actually got there? Did it make you feel closer to her?
Visiting the crime scene was a life-changing experience for me. One, it was just frightening to be there and to know the fear that she would have felt that night that her killer took her there and then, stole her life. But I was so incensed that, he this killer took her, he murdered her, and he just left her body there like it didn't matter. And she did matter. She had her whole life ahead of her. So I think being a mom myself and being out there, being horrified by this unsolved crime, it changed me in so many ways and on so many levels. And when I was out there that day, I vowed to find her killer. I promised her that I would, and I'm going to. And I'm not going to stop until I do. And that is a life-changing moment that not everybody can understand or appreciate, but, um, it's what happened to me, and I think that's what happens to most people that do go out there and actually experience it for themselves.
Now, you had access to all of the case files to this case, of course, but you also had access to Melissa's diary. Now, tell us about this diary. How did it feel getting inside the really personal thoughts of Melissa? And did you find that this had an effect on you?
I have been very blessed and appreciative to law enforcement for allowing me to have access to those case files, because I think it's very helpful to have, that kind of in my back pocket as I'm learning about the case and fighting for justice. But as part of that, they did want me to read her diary. And I wanted to read it, but I was also very afraid to read it because it was her private thoughts. Um, I did. I was so emotional when I read it. It's like a roller coaster because you're reading some of her happiest moments, some of her most disappointing moments, being frustrated, all those emotions. And it made me feel like I knew her. In the book, I write about it being, a magical experience. And it was in a lot of ways. It was like visiting an old friend. And I know Melissa now in a way that most people who knew her while she was alive never did, because these were her personal private thoughts. And so it did change me. It made me even more determined to find her killer. I remember thinking to myself, how dare he? How dare he do what he did?
And I think that when you've got that, you're reading somebody's diary, it's the thoughts that they write down thinking that nobody's ever going to read it. So it's like a really honest representation of their thoughts and feelings. And to be able to sit there and read through that and to see her handwriting, no, that's the thing I think that got me, to see her handwriting, and she's not here anymore. And you can sort of read it in her own words. And I think that kind of makes you, like you say, a bit angry and a bit, I think, a bit that you just it sort of gives you that extra push because you're as close to her as you're ever going to get at that point.
You're absolutely right. You've got these pages open of this precise feminine handwriting that is writing about, what happened in school, the joy over some Christmas gifts. And I think one of the things that got me, and I still get emotional thinking about it, is that she wrote about that Mickey Mouse watch that she received a year before she was murdered. And I remember I wept. I was so sad that she had those words written about how excited she was, only to know that the man who would kill her would also steal that watch. And I think it served as two things for me. It served as fuel for my passion, but it also it did, kind of what you said. It kind of cemented that I have a special relationship with Melissa now too that's much different than anybody else will ever have. And she was a beautiful person, and she deserved to have a long, beautiful life, and he took that from her. So I think this is the best that all of us who love Melissa and want justice can do now, is just fight for her.
So tell us a bit about the suspects that have come to light in the case. I know there's some that we're not allowed to talk about, so we won't talk about those because of legal reasons, but tell us about some of the suspects that we can talk about.
We've looked really, really hard at a man named Larry Swearingen. He killed another 19-year-old college student named Melissa Trotter in Texas. He kidnapped her. He drove her an hour away to a national forest where he strangled her and left her. And he has ties to Arkansas. Investigators were able to, track him to Arkansas just a couple of days before Melissa Witt was murdered, and he was about 2 hours away. And so we've spent a significant amount of time looking at Swearingen. He was eventually executed in the murder of Melissa Trotter in Conroe, Texas, and he will remain the number one suspect in the Witt case until we can either find evidence that he was in Fort Smith and we can tie him to Melissa, or until we can clear him. And that's been a frustrating process, quite a journey.
I mean, when we first looked at this case, we were both set on it being Larry Swearingen straight away. That was what we both first were like, it's got to be him. He's murdered a girl in very similar circumstances to Melissa, and he's not far from the area. And we were straight away, that was our first thought, wasn't it? That we were convinced that's who it was.
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, sitting here now, obviously he would be one of my top suspects, if not, the suspect, just because of the similarities between the two cases.
Yeah, but then, we have Travis Crouch. He was from the area. He grew up and worked at the church camp that was, a mile and a half down the road from where Melissa's body was found. And then he went on several years after Melissa Witt's murder. He was arrested for kidnapping. He kidnapped a girl from a parking lot. He took her to a remote mountaintop, and she escaped with her life, and he's currently in prison. Oh yeah, thank goodness. But he's in prison in Colorado. I do correspond with him, and of course he denies that he killed Melissa Witt, and I'm going to be honest with you, I believe him. But he's not been officially cleared in her murder by law enforcement yet. But that is something that I still continue to work on, because the more suspects that you can clear, then you can really hone in on the folks that you've got and spend your time, working those leads.
And that's the thing, isn't it? They're not clear until they're clear. So you get a feeling that, I mean, you do, when you look at cases and stuff, you get a feeling of who you think is a strong contender to be a murderer or, a culprit in this. But then you have those that you think, no, I really don't think, but you can't clear them 100% because there isn't that evidence to completely clear them. And that makes it quite difficult for researching and for investigating a case like this.
It does, and it's maddening. It's maddening. And so, I'm in a unique position because I've literally talked to every suspect in the case. Even now, even before, some of them are now deceased. Um, but before long, I may be the only living person that's had all of the contact with all of the suspects. And so, I take that very seriously and log all the information I can, until we can get to a point where we have more definitive information and can make, decisions for the case, based on that.
Yeah. Now, there are some conspiracy theories in Melissa's case. Can you tell us a little bit about them?
Oh, I can. I get a kick out of it.
They're crazy, aren't they? Some of these are mad.
One that I write about, extensively is a woman named, who I will call Sandy Jones. Obviously, I can't use, real names, but, she is really bent on this conspiracy that, there's a cover up in Melissa's murder. It involves local businessmen and drugs and a kidnapped child. And it's just this crazy wild theory. And what I have found in the past 7 years is that there are people that will attach themselves to these cases with information like that, that for whatever reason, it makes them want to interject themselves into the case. So it's been a crazy ride. But yeah, Sandy Jones, that's something I will never forget. I'll be carrying that with me for the rest of my life.
And we just interviewed two law enforcement agents, detectives, and we kind of asked about questions about, you know, how social media or how the public's input in the case or their suggestions or theories, how it affects them and how they investigate. And they told us it just takes up time and effort, because every tip that they get, regardless of how crazy it is, they have to follow up on it. So
It's
yes,
true.
yeah. So you get these conspiracy theories, and yeah, they might sound crazy, but it's their job to at least look into them and see if there's anything to it.
Yeah, and thanks to Sandy Jones, we've looked into quite a few of those. Of course, it gets us back to the same place, but you're right. Those do have to be looked at because you don't want to miss anything in a cold case, for sure, or any
No.
case, that could lead you to the killer.
Can you imagine if it was this wild theory that you thought that's absolutely nuts, and then in the end, it finds out that actually that one that you disregarded was the answer to the case? That would just be awful.
It would be, and you can't take that chance. I mean,
No.
you just can't.
So in the book, you're really honest. It's a very honest representation of your thoughts and feelings throughout throughout this whole investigation. And you're very honest about how it affected your personal life and your family. You say in the book that you've suffered from recurring nightmares, which are absolutely frightening, the nightmares that you describe in the book. You also really scared me in the book when you wrote about receiving packages at home, and when you were out grocery shopping with your kids. It's scary, the amount of messages that you've got that are less than friendly.
Yeah, it's scary. It's been something that's been very life-changing for my family. We've had to take some extra precautions in terms of safety and the way we're going to handle things moving forward. But, it has given me at least the knowledge to impart to other people who want to become an advocate on the level that I've done for Melissa, is that you need to think really long and hard about putting your name and your face to a cold case, because you're going to get these types of things that happen. It's just inevitable because there's so many different types of people and personalities that attach themselves to to cold cases. So, my husband has been a great source of strength for me. And, one of the things he told me is like, look, LaDonna, you've already done it. You're already out there. You can't quit now. And so, we're going to do some things a little bit differently, and we do, and we have a lot of security in place at our home now and places that we work, and that makes me feel very safe. Um, but it is unnerving, anytime I get a package that's not marked in my mailbox, it makes me nervous.
I can imagine. It's quite scary. And I think when people read the book, they'll see how much personally you've put into this, and how much of your life this has completely taken over investigating this case. And with no, people say, oh yeah, you're doing it for your financial reward or whatever, but it's not, because the proceeds of the book go to charity, and everything you do is for Melissa Witt and for charity, and finding DNA samples that then need to be tested. And I think it's just testament to show how passionate you actually are about this case.
I appreciate you saying that. I mean, I there was a time where I felt like I had to explain myself all the time. I get these messages on Facebook and, how dare you do this? You're exploiting Melissa. And, there's just been some really horrible things said to me. And I'm really now to the point where, I think after 7 years of being this dedicated to this case, and the amount of time, energy, and money and everything else that I've poured into this, that I don't need to explain myself anymore.
No.
My heart is to solve the case because I want Melissa Witt to have justice. This is a tragedy in my mind. And I know the killer's out there, and I know that he can be brought to justice, and And I know that she needs this kind of advocacy to make it happen. So I have to put all of it aside and just stay focused on the goal.
And I think he will be brought to justice. I think it will happen. You put so much work in, and I do think that there will be a solution to this case, and I think we'll be able to give justice to Melissa.
I hope so. I mean, and I believe that. I mean, I'm talking with investigators and with retired detectives every single week. We're texting almost daily about the case. The book has blown the case up on a level that they never had anticipated.
Good.
The phones are ringing, people are writing in. Everything that I had dreamed and hoped would happen is happening. And that is our best case scenario to get this case solved, to get as many eyes on the case and people saying, "Oh my goodness, I remember this. I want to call it in." But I would like to say too that one of the reasons that I wrote the book the way I did, from my point of view, not to make the book about myself, but it is about my journey in this case, is I wanted to be raw and vulnerable, so somebody out there that had information would maybe feel comfortable to say, "I can do that too. I can be vulnerable and brave, and I'm gonna give this information that I have." So, right now, I'm just convinced it's gonna work. I mean, it's just there's so many great things happening in her case.
Good.
Now, researching Melissa's case has brought lots of things to light, including Horror Man. Can you tell us who Horror Man is?
I can. That's probably the most frightening part of the case, but we had a tip come in. Basically, that tip led us to something that's called death fantasy, death fetish, pornography and stories. And that's where I did some undercover work with someone else for about a year into that community. And it's really dangerous. These people are fascinated with um, the thought of murdering women. And at any given time, there's about 100,000 people that are into this type of thing throughout the world, and they gather in these online chat rooms and they talk about the different ways that they want to kill women.
Just
And
100,000 people. Just let that sink in for a minute. That is a huge community of people doing some scary stuff.
well, and doing some illegal stuff because
Yeah.
what we've done is a lot of research into what's illegal in what city, state, and country. And because of our work, there's been several websites that have closed down, and I'm so happy to take credit for that because they found out we were looking into them. But through this research, we've come across people who were pretty convinced are committing real crimes, and we've come across people who are funding real snuff films. And they're doing things that are just incredibly frightening. And it's an important part of this journey because these people are dangerous. They'll tell you that they're not. They'll tell you this is fantasy. But there is something inherently wrong with anyone who is fantasizing about killing another human being. So
Definitely.
there's more to say about this, and I intend to pretty much throw the doors open to the internet community that is death fetish.
So how does Horror Man fit in with the death fetishes then? Where does he fit into all that?
So we found him in an online forum, and he was posting some things in these death fetish forums that was so frightening. I was convinced, and I'm still convinced to this day, that he's talking about real crimes. And in fact, I came across one post that was so scary to me because I believe to this day it was about the Witt murder.
Oh my God.
And you know, essentially Horror Man found me. He found the real me. And I've dealt with some pretty serious harassment from him since then. He's emailed me, he's called me, he's sent me flowers. He's just done a variety of things, to kind of taunt me. And so it's very dangerous. I think that he is a criminal. I can't tell you for sure if he was involved in Melissa's murder, but I can tell you that the things that he's done and said have been, it'll blow your mind. It's pretty frightening.
And at the end of the book, because there is an email, isn't there, in the book from Horror Man to you. You can actually read his email in the book. Is
Well,
that him?
the book ends with an email from the Vermilion
Oh, it's
Strangler,
a strangler, yeah.
but it does turn out to be they're one and the same.
Oh,
So yes, yeah. So in the email's pretty frightening. I
it
mean,
is. It's horrible. It's creepy.
but this is where the case has gone, and I have just made a vow that I will take whatever road I have to get her justice, and so this is just part of it.
And you finish
Unfortunately,
at the end of the book. You finish with a letter to Melissa's killer. I can imagine you'd have a lot that you actually want to say to him. How many drafts did that letter take? I can't imagine you did that in one.
no, it was many, many, many,
Yeah.
many, because that's something that sometimes I can't sleep at night, and I'm staring at my ceiling, and I'm thinking about what I would say to him and what I will say to him someday,
Mm.
right? And I just took the best of everything that has ever, I've ever thought about saying to him and put it in that letter. So I really condensed it. But those are the highlights. Those are the things that I want him to know. I think it's important that he knows that I'm looking for him every single day.
Do you think he's read
And
the
then
book?
I do.
Yeah,
I do.
I think
I
so.
think he's ordered several copies, actually.
Mm.
So, I feel like I correspond with him, pretty regularly, actually, and, I think the book's made him incredibly nervous, and I'm glad for that. It's a tense situation for me right now, because
Mm.
it's one thing for me to have done the work I've done, and I won't say behind the scenes, but the Facebook page,
Mm.
and the podcasts that I have been a guest on, but it's a completely different thing to put this book out.
Mm.
And I think
Mhm.
that took it up a notch for him, and it's going to be interesting. I think there's going to be a lot to report in the months ahead.
Mm.
Now, if you did have the chance to meet with the killer, would you do it?
Oh, in a heartbeat. Absolutely. Um, I would love to be the one to bring him in. I'm a private investigator, remember? In the state of Arkansas, I could actually arrest him.
You can, yeah.
I could. But you say that, and I really do feel like I've had contact with the killer already. I
Mm.
think this is somebody that I do talk to, and um I don't have any regrets about that. I think that he sees me as a threat, and he should. Because I cannot stop shining light on this case until his secret is revealed. So, I mean, the answer is yes, no hesitation.
That I can, because the whole story of this and reading your book is like a film. And because I know you and because I speak to you a lot, and I know personally what you've put into this, I think that when you read the book, you kind of get you get an understanding of just how much there is within this case. I mean, we know because we investigate stuff ourselves, and we know how much paperwork there is and case files there are. But this one case has literally taken so much from you. I would love for you to have that day, for you to be able to stand there and say, I did it. I got justice for Melissa. We've done it. I think that day will come. And I'm really excited for the day it comes for you.
Thank you. I want that so much. I regularly visit where Melissa and her mother are laid to rest. And I was just there a couple
Mm.
weeks ago, and I told them we did it. The book is out, the information's coming, and justice is going to be here. And I believe that with all of my heart, and my team believes that, and we're just going to stay focused on that. And I can hardly wait. I mean, the wheels of justice have turned very, very slowly in this case, but they are turning, and that's important.
That's very important.
Now, you do have something very exciting and exclusive to tell us, which we are so very privileged to share with this group of people and our listeners. First, can you tell us what this is?
Yes, and I'm so excited to talk about it. So, The Girl I Never Knew is actually the first book in a series. We did not want to tell anybody that in the beginning, and I hinted towards it because it ends with a cliffhanger. But there's another book coming pretty quickly, October 28th. The second book in the series, entitled Strangled, will drop, and I am so excited to get this book out. it's just going to blow everybody's minds. But it's book 2 in a series that we're calling Who Killed Melissa Witt.
I am so excited for people to read this book. I tell everybody to read the first book, and a lot of people that I've told have read it and have come back to me and said, oh my God, it's amazing. And I couldn't put it down. The same as me. I just couldn't put it down. And then when you gave me a couple of chapters of the second book, I messaged you literally within a half an hour and was just, oh my God, it has opened up, just in the first 3 chapters, opened up a whole new world that we didn't even know existed. And it's absolutely mind-blowing. It's like, you just can't believe that this kind of thing is actually real. And I can't wait to read the rest of the book.
Well, thank you for saying that. And the support that both you've shown has just been amazing, and I appreciate that. And I'm excited for people to read this book. One, because what we talked about earlier, and my need for justice for Melissa. But 2, this book is meant specifically to shine a light on a community that should not exist.
Definitely.
And I want the world to know that there are people out there who are glorifying killing our daughters, our sisters, our mothers, our friends, that they are specifically targeting women, even if they call it fantasy. And I think it's important for readers to see that the dedication that my team has to this case. And we brought a new team member on because of the book. She actually wrote the book with me. Her name is Alicia Lockhart. And I think that people are going to be shocked about what we've been doing the past year. Honestly, I think the book is really going to shock people. So in the best way. And I'm just anxious to get it out there. I really am. So, releasing it a couple of days before Halloween seems incredibly fitting.
Yeah, it definitely does.
Yeah.
It really does.
Now, in The Girl I Never Knew, you had a foreword that was written by one of my good friends, Nick, from True Crime Garage. And Strangled has a foreword written by another one of my good friends. Can you tell us who that is?
I can, because she's one of my dear friends too, and it is Cherry with Crimepedia. And I am so excited.
I don't, because you make me cry, because when you asked me to do it, I was literally in tears. I feel very, very honoured to be your friend to start with, and then very honoured to be able to write that and to be given an insight into this book. And I just want everyone to read it. And it makes me so happy when I read comments from people that are telling me how good the first book is. And I just tell everyone, go and buy it. It's brilliant. We've had a lot of our listeners that have come back to us and said, we've got the book. I was reading it on the train. I finished it in 24 hours. And it's just testament to what a fantastic writer you are and how brilliant you are at throwing open cases like this. Where can people pick the book up? Where can you get it from?
So as soon as it launches on October 28th, it'll be everywhere books are sold. So Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, you name it, you'll be able to get it. And I'm excited. I mean, it's a little bit scary because, we are taking on head on or fighting the death fetish community. But it's worth it, because I think that even if they don't have any ties to Melissa's death, there's enough there that we had to look at them. But 2, there's enough there that says to me, we have to stand up against them. We cannot let anything else happen that's even remotely similar to what happened to Melissa Witt. So, it's like the first book. It's a labor of love. It's a little bit darker journey than what what you'll read about in The Girl I Never Knew. But I think it's really important, and I hope that people pick up a copy.
And I think that the way that you and Alicia meet each other, that was the bit that I was literally mouth open reading. So definitely get yourself a copy of this book. Get the first book first, because I promise you it'll be an absolutely fantastic read, and it helps keep things going in Melissa's case, and it just gets her name out there, and it gets more people knowing about the case, which is exactly what we want and need. And then get yourself a copy of the second book, because again, I promise you it is an absolutely brilliant book.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Now, before we go, LaDonna, in addition to being an author and having these books, you also run a nonprofit called All the Lost Girls. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what the goal of All the Lost Girls is?
Absolutely. So, All the Lost Girls is an organization that was founded in memory of Melissa Witt. And essentially, the mission of that agency is to focus on cases that are female strangulation cases that are unsolved. It's so important. And I felt like that particular very restricted mission was something that I was very led to do. I'm in a really unique position because I've almost become an expert on female strangulation cases in the United States because of my work on the Witt case. And so we have got an amazing board that are very dedicated to this cause. And my friends Morgan and Cherry are on that board. Thank you. We've got people who are really dedicated, and our first case that we are really focusing in on is Melissa Witt's case, and that's going to help generate even more publicity for her case. So I'm very grateful, and that organization will continue to grow, and I'm anxious to see what happens.
And we're very proud to be part of it. Very, very proud.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. And I hope that this helps to spread the word for Melissa's case, and that every single person that reads that book is another set of eyes, another set of ideas, another set of things that might be able to help in finding justice for Melissa. And one day we will definitely get justice for her. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And I believe that too. Justice is coming. I think we're just almost there. But thank you so much, guys.
So amazing to speak to LaDonna. And
yes,
that's our CrimeCon episode. We do have to say a couple of thank yous before we go today. We need to say thank you to Eileen, and also thank you to Vicky, our new Patreons. Thank you for joining us, guys.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Lovely to have you on board. Thank you very much. And we'll have another case closed, Crimepedia case closed for you shortly as well. So look out for that one. We'll have a new one for you that Morgan has written up for us. Next week, we'll be back with another episode. It's my episode next week. So it'll be a new one for you. So make sure you're listening. And for now, be nice.
And bye.